Hi, I'm Chris, and today I'd like to talk to you about the Festool Domino system. When I first saw the Domino system a few years ago, I loved the idea of being able to create mortise and tenon joinery quickly and easily using floating tenons or dominoes. Now, when I looked at the price, I wasn't sure if I could justify the expense. So I looked around. I considered other options. I looked at building a mortising block for a punch router. I looked at slot mortisers. I looked at hollow chisel mortisers. I even looked at cutting my mortises by hand with the chisel. But in the end, I went with the Domino, and I'm really glad that I did. Its ease of use and speed and precision really make my work that much easier, and I really appreciate all that it offers, and the price I feel is justified. Now, I've got my Festool Domino here. It's hooked up to my CT26 dust extractor. It's also plugged in as well. So when I turn on the Domino, the vacuum comes on. When I turn off the Domino, the vacuum system goes off after a few seconds. So let me disconnect it here. The hose and the plug-in cord. If you're not familiar with this, it's a quarter turn to lock and unlock. So here it's locked, quarter turn, and it's unlocked. So take the cord out, it won't accidentally unplug on you ever. And we're left with the Domino. While doing research for the Domino, I learned that there were two different types of bases, pins and paddles. I've got the latter, which is found in the newer model. These are the paddles. Now, the former model had spring-loaded steel pins which come out of the fence the same way that these do here, but because they're pins, they would actually register in the previous mortise, which would allow you to step mortises down a board at a fairly close distance. When I first bought my Domino, I was able to try both the pin type and the paddle type base, and I liked the paddles, I liked the pins. I could see the value in the pins, but since owning my paddle type base for 3 months or so, I really haven't missed the pins. So I've got no regrets with not getting a pin model, which by the way now are very hard to find if that's what you're after. Now, even the paddle type Domino does come with pins of some sort. Now, these are the cross stops here, and they've got spring-loaded pins just like the old fence, and these are used to register subsequent mortises down the length of a board. Say if you're gluing up a large tabletop and you want to use the tenons for alignment. So they slip in to the keyed slots in the side, and you plunge your first slot, and then you would register your pin in that slot, and you continue mortising down the board until you've reached the end. And then for the other direction, you've got one for the left side of the machine as well there. If I am trying to cut a mortise in the face of a board, I'm going to be balancing the joiner like this here and trying to balance like this. It's really not very easy. There's not a whole lot of registration, and plus all the weight is back here. So this is where one of my most used accessories comes in. It is the right angle support bracket like this here. Now, how to attach this? We'll fold the fence back, lock it down, put the joiner up on its fence like this. Now I'll slide the right angle bracket up to it and bolt it in place like this. And now I've got a lot more support when I fold down this here. I've got a lot more support there to balance the joiner on, and it really does make it a lot easier. Another feature of the right angle support, which I believe is unique to the paddle model, is these flip stops here. They fold through the base like this here, and they register against the paddles. So this is a feature which I believe will be unique to the paddle base. And what it allows me to do is, normally when I cut my first mortise, I will butt it up against the paddle like this here, and the center of my mortise will be right here, about 1 inch and 3/8 away from the edge. Now if I have narrower stock, I might want it closer, so I can flip down this stock, and then suddenly it's about 3/4 of an inch out from the edge of the board, and I've got one on each side there, so I can work from either direction. This is the trim stop. So it's got two green knobs here, which you will loosen, and you can slide the fences in and out here. It's a nice tight fit, which is very good. So that slips down like this until it's even across the top, until it's registering right across. And then you slide these two stops, or two clamps forward, and tighten down the knobs. 1, 2, and then it's attached to the joiner. Now what I'll do is center the fence here. It's got a scale. This is part of the domino fence. It's got a clear shield here with the center line here, and then it's got a scale on both sides. So that'll help you center your stock in here. So I'm going to go ahead and set it where I think it should be. Then I'll get my stock. And that's pretty close. So it's a little bit closer there, and there we go. There's also a center line on the base plate here, and that will help you center your stock, make sure it's centered. So once you've got this set up there, you can go ahead, you can clamp it in your vise or down to your workbench, and then you can plunge your mortise and it'll keep it centered. This here controls the width of the mortise. So right now it's set in the medium range, which will allow a little bit of room on either side of the tenon. When it's set down to the smallest one, it'll cut a mortise the exact width of the tenon, and this one here is bigger still. So if I'm doing multiple mortises along the length of a board, say for my dining table, my first one will be a tight one. At the very end of the board, end of each board, it'll be a tight mortise, and then I'll step each subsequent one, I'll have it in the wider setting, and that'll allow me to get my one end flush where I put that tight mortise, and it'll allow for easier assembling of the rest of them. They don't need to be precise because they're not providing any lateral alignment, just height, which is determined by the bit. Now the last thing I'd like to talk about is sustainers. When you buy the domino, it comes in this gray case sustainer, and inside it's got a custom insert here, custom molded insert for all the domino parts. So you've got your right angle support here, you've got your two cross stops, which go like this, and you've got the trim stop that's in here. You've also got room for the 5 bits, which are available for it, the 4, 5, 6, 8, and 10 millimeter bits, and the wrench there. And they all have their place, they all stay there quite well. Now, another thing you can buy for the domino is the sustainer with the Domino Assortment, and that looks like this here. It's the same size sustainer, and it's got an assortment of. It also comes with a set of 5 bits, which are in a nice foam lined container like this here. I like to store the bits in the other sustainer actually. I found that there's a little spot right at the back here, right behind the mold for the bits. So most of the time in my shop I've got my sustainer stored on top of the CT26 extractor here. So I've got the domino one at the bottom, and then I've got my tenons, the dominoes, on top. The tenons are the ones I use more often, of course. So it latches in like this here, and I usually leave the front unlatched so it's a little bit easier to get into the bottom. Whenever I need to get an accessory for the domino, say the trim stop or the cross stop, I do need to unlatch the top sustainer and then open up the bottom one. So I'm looking forward to the T-locks. I think a T-lock would be a nice addition here.